Hi friends, this is where we meet Lyle Crocodile. Our first story starts with the house on East 88th Street. And it's by Bernard Weaver. He wrote the words and drew the pictures. And that is the author that we will be reading this week. This is the house on East 88th Street. It is empty now, but it won't be for long. Strange sounds come from the house. Can you hear them? Listen. Swish, swash, splash, sploosh. It began one sunny morning when the citywide storage and moving company truck pulled up to the house on East 88th Street and unloaded the belongings of Mr. and Mrs. Joseph F. Prim and their youngest son, Joshua. It was a trying day for everyone. Mrs. Prim just couldn't decide where to put the piano, and Mr. Prim's favorite pipe was accidentally packed away in one of the dozens of cartons lying about. Swish, swash, splash, swoosh. Loudly and clearly the sounds now rumbled through the house. It's only a little thunder, Mrs. Prim assured everyone. When a citywide storage and moving man carried in their potted pistachio tree, everyone rejoiced. The truck was at last empty. The movers wished them well and hurried off for their next job of the day. Now I'm going to prepare our luncheon, announced Mrs. Prim. But I want to go upstairs and wash these grimy hands. Swish, swash, splash, swoosh. A puzzled Mrs. Prim stopped to listen. By and by her ears directed her to the bathroom door. What can it be? She asked herself as she opened the door. What she saw made her slam it quickly shut. Mrs. Prim knew she was going to scream and just waited for it to happen, but she couldn't scream. She could scarcely even talk. The most Mrs. Prim was able to manage was the sharp, hoarse whisper of a voice which she used to call Mr. Prim. "Joseph," she said, "there's a crocodile in our bathtub." Mr. Prim looked into the bathroom. Who do we see? Oh my. The next moment found them flying off in different directions. "Help, help!" Mrs. Prim cried out as she struggled with a window stuck with fresh paint. "Operator, operator!" Mr. Prim shouted into the telephone, and then he remembered that it was not yet connected. Joshua, who had heard everything, raced to the front door, to be greeted there by an oddly dressed man who handed him a note. "This will explain everything about the crocodile," said the man, leaving quietly and swiftly. Here they are making their call. Mr. Prim read the note. "Please be kind to my crocodile. He is the most gentle of creatures and would not do harm to a flea. He must have tender, loving care, for he is an artist and can perform many good tricks. Perhaps he will perform some for you. I shall return. Cordially, Hector P. Valenti, star of stage and screen. P.S. He will only eat Turkish caviar. P.P.S. His name is Lyle." "Turkish caviar indeed," exclaimed Mrs. Prim. "Oh, to think that this could happen on East 88th Street. Whatever will we do with him?" Suddenly, before anyone could think of a worthy answer, there was Lyle. Just as suddenly, he got hold of a ball that had been lying among Joshua's belongings and began to balance it on his nose. And it rolled down the notches of his spine. Now he was walking on his front feet and taking flying leaps. Now he was twirling Joshua's hoop, doing it so expertly that the Prims just had to clap their hands and laugh. Lyle bowed appreciatively. He had won his way into their hearts and into their home. Every home should have a crocodile, said Mrs. Prim one day. Lyle is one of the family now. He helps out with the chores. He won't allow anyone else to carry out old newspapers or take in the milk. He folds towels, feeds the birds, and when he sets the table, there's always a surprise. I only had to show him once how to make up a bed. People everywhere stop to talk with him. They say he is the nicest crocodile they ever met. Lyle likes to play in the park. He always goes once around in the pony cart. And he has learned to eat something besides Turkish caviar. Lyle is a good sport. Everyone wants to play on his side. He is wonderful company. We take him everywhere. Just give him his Turkish caviar and his bed of warm water, and he is happy as a bird. One day, a brass band paraded past the house on East 88th Street. The Prim family rushed to the window to watch. They called for Lyle, but there was no answer. Look, someone pointed out, it's Lyle. He's in the parade. There was Lyle doing his specialty somersault, flying leaps, walking on his front feet, and taking bows. Just as he did the first day they laid eyes on him, the people watching cheered him on, while Lyle smiled back at them and blew kisses. A photographer was on hand to take pictures. The next day, Lyle was famous. The telephone rang continually, and bundles of mail were dropped off by the door. One letter was from someone Lyle knew particularly well. Mr. Prim read it. Just a few words to say. I shall return. Cordially, Hector P. Valenti, star of stage and screen. P.S. Very soon. P.P.S. to fetch my crocodile. Several days later, Mrs. Prim and Lyle were in the kitchen shelling peas when they heard a knocking at the door. It was Hector P. Valenti, star of stage and screen. I have come for Lyle, announced Signor Valenti. There's the note, and there's the picture. You can't have Lyle, cried Mrs. Prim. He is very happy living here, and we love him dearly. Lyle must be returned to me, insisted Signor Valenti. Was it not I who raised him from young crocodilehood? Was it not I who taught him his bag of tricks? We have appeared together on stages the world over. But why did you leave him alone in a strange house? Asked Mrs. Prim. Because, answered Signor Valenti, I could no longer afford to pay for his Turkish caviar. But now Lyle is famous, and we shall be rich. Mrs. Prim was saddened, but she knew Lyle properly belonged to Signor Valenti, and she had to let him go. It was a tearful parting for everyone. Signor Valente had big plans for Lyle. They were to travel far and wide and stay in many hotels. Where sometimes the tubs were too big and other times too small or too crowded. Signor Valente did what he could to coax a smile from Lyle. He tried making funny faces at him. He stood on his head. He tickled his toes and told him uproarious stories that in happier days would have had Lyle doubled over with laughter. But Lyle could not laugh. Nor could he make people laugh. He made them cry instead. One night in Paris, he made an entire audience cry. The theater manager was furious and ordered them off the stage. Meanwhile, at the house on East 88th Street, Mrs. Prim went about her work without her usual bright smile, and deep sighs could be heard coming from behind the newspaper Mr. Prim was reading. Every morning, Joshua anxiously awaited the arrival of the mailman in hope of receiving word from Lyle. One morning, a letter did come. He knew the handwriting very well. Just a few words to say, "We shall return. Cordially," you're right, Hector P. Valente, former star of stage and screen. P.S. I am sick of crocodiles. P.P.S. and the tears of crocodiles. Not too many days after, the Prims were delighted to find Hector P. Valente and Lyle at their door. "Take him back," said Signor Valente. "He is no good. He will never make anyone laugh again." But Signor Valente was very much mistaken. Everyone laughed and laughed and laughed. And in the end, so did Signor Valente. So if you should happen to be walking past the house on East 88th Street, and if you should happen to hear sounds that go swish, swash, splash, swoosh, don't be surprised. It's only Lyle. Lyle, the crocodile. The end. Well, that's our first story about Lyle and the house on East 88th Street. We'll talk about it more soon. See you soon. Bye.